Russia has a complicated relationship with religion. Now there's a new problem, and it involves the Church of Scientology. Many people around the world are suspicious of Scientology. A court just said the Scientology Church in St. Petersburg is extremist and must close. People everywhere are shocked. This makes us wonder about religious freedom in Russia. It makes us wonder how far the government will go to stop beliefs it doesn't like. L. Ron Hubbard started the Church of Scientology in the United States in 1954. His vision was to create a new religious movement that combined elements of science fiction, psychology, and spirituality. The church quickly grew in the United States, attracting a diverse group of followers who were drawn to its unique teachings and practices. It's had a lot of ups and downs in Russia. The journey of Scientology in Russia has been anything but smooth. From its initial introduction to the present day, the church has faced numerous challenges and controversies. Scientology came to Russia right after the Soviet Union ended. The early 1990s were a period of significant transformation for the country. With the collapse of the Soviet regime, Russia was opening up to new ideas and influences from the West. That was a time of big changes. The Russian people were experiencing newfound freedoms, and were eager to explore different philosophies and belief systems. This environment provided a fertile ground for new religious movements, including Scientology. At first, people were curious about Scientology. Many Russians attended meetings and seminars to learn more about the church's teachings. The promise of personal development and spiritual enlightenment resonated with those seeking meaning in a rapidly changing world. But then, the Russian Orthodox Church pushed back. The Orthodox Church, which has deep historical roots in Russia, viewed Scientology as a threat to its influence and authority. They were concerned about the growing popularity of this new religious movement. They saw Scientology as strange and maybe dangerous. The Orthodox Church leaders publicly criticized Scientology, labeling it as a cult and warning people about its potential dangers. This led to increased scrutiny and suspicion from the public. Scientology's unusual beliefs and practices made things worse. The church's emphasis on auditing, the use of e-meters, and its secretive nature only fueled the controversy. Many Russians found these practices to be alien and unsettling. They were very different from traditional religions. The contrast between Scientology and the established religious traditions in Russia was stark. This difference made it difficult for Scientology to gain widespread acceptance. The Russian government listened to the Orthodox Church. The close relationship between the state and the Orthodox Church meant that the government's stance on Scientology was heavily influenced by the church's position. They also didn't like Western ideas. The Russian government was wary of Western influences and viewed Scientology as an extension of Western cultural and ideological infiltration. This added another layer of resistance to the church's efforts to establish itself in Russia. They started to worry about Scientology. Concerns about the church's intentions and its potential impact on Russian society grew. Government officials began to see Scientology as a destabilizing force that needed to be controlled. The government started raiding Scientology churches, arresting people, and taking them to court. These actions were part of a broader crackdown on what the government considered to be harmful foreign influences. The church in St. Petersburg had the most trouble. This particular branch of the church faced intense scrutiny and frequent raids. The local authorities were determined to shut it down, leading to numerous legal battles and public protests. The St. Petersburg Church of Scientology was in big trouble. The church, known for its controversial practices and secretive nature, had been under scrutiny for quite some time, but now, things had escalated to a whole new level. The court said the church was part of an extremist group. This was a serious accusation, one that could have severe consequences for the church and its members. The label of extremist is not used lightly, and it brought with it a host of legal and social challenges. The Russian government uses this word, extremist, for groups they think are dangerous. This term is often applied to organizations that the government believes pose a threat to national security or public order. It's a powerful tool that can be used to suppress dissent and control various groups. They said the church was doing things that could cause hate and violence. These allegations were based on supposed activities and teachings that the government claimed incited discord and unrest among the population. The specifics of these activities were not always clear, but the implications were serious. But it's not clear what those things were. The lack of clarity around these accusations made it difficult for the church to defend itself. The vague nature of the charges left room for interpretation, which could be manipulated to fit the government's narrative. The church also had money problems. Financial issues had plagued the organization for years, and now they were coming to a head. The church's financial practices were under intense scrutiny, adding another layer of complexity to their legal troubles. The government said the church wasn't following the rules for businesses. Compliance with business regulations is crucial, and the church was accused of failing to meet these standards. This non-compliance could lead to fines, sanctions, and further legal action. They said the church didn't explain what happened to millions of rubles. The disappearance of such a large sum of money raised many questions. Where did the money go? How was it spent? These unanswered questions fueled suspicion and distrust. The government often accuses groups they don't like of money problems. This tactic is used to discredit and undermine organizations that are seen as a threat. By casting doubt on their financial integrity, the government can weaken their influence and support. This makes the church look even worse. The combination of extremist accusations and financial misconduct painted a very negative picture. Public perception was heavily influenced by these allegations, making it difficult for the church to maintain its reputation and support. The court's decision to close the Scientology church shows how the Kremlin thinks about religion. The government wants to control religion. They use the idea of extremism to silence people. President Putin's government sees religion as a security threat, not a freedom. They think groups with foreign ties or groups that disagree with the Orthodox Church are dangerous. This is why they've cracked down on other groups too, like Jehovah's Witnesses, Muslims, and Protestants. They say these groups are extremist or breaking the law. The St. Petersburg Church of Scientology isn't giving up. They're going to fight the court's decision. This is just the latest fight for the church in Russia. Scientology has tried many times to be recognized as a real religion, but the government keeps saying no and accusing them of breaking the law. Scientology has asked international groups for help. The European Court of Human Rights has agreed with Scientology twice. They said Russia violated Scientology's religious freedom, but Russia hasn't listened. This shows how hard it is to fight the Kremlin. Many people around the world are angry about the court's decision. Governments, human rights groups, and religious freedom groups all say it's wrong. They say it's an attack on basic freedoms and a bad sign for other religious groups in Russia. The United States is worried about how Russia treats Scientologists. They want Russia to respect religious freedom and stop persecuting minorities. Groups like Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International agree. They say there's less and less religious freedom in Russia. This court decision is about Scientology, but it's important for other groups too. It's a scary example for other religious minorities in Russia, especially groups that are foreign, different, or speak against the government. It shows that the Kremlin will use accusations of extremism and money problems to silence people. People say Russia uses its laws unfairly. They say the government targets groups it doesn't like but ignores similar problems in groups it likes, like the Russian Orthodox Church. What will happen to religious freedom in Russia? This court decision is a bad sign. It looks like there will be less and less religious freedom. The government doesn't like beliefs and practices that are different from what it thinks is okay. This crackdown on religion could cause big problems. Religious minorities might get angry, and that could lead to more problems. It also makes Russia look bad to other countries. It makes Russia look like a country that doesn't care about freedom. The closing of the Scientology Church in St. Petersburg is a stark reminder of the challenges religious minorities face in Russia. This event is not just an isolated incident but part of a broader pattern of religious suppression that has been growing over the years. The Russian government has been tightening its grip on religious practices, making it increasingly difficult for minority groups to worship freely. This church, once a place of solace and community, now stands empty and silent, a symbol of the broader struggle for religious freedom in the country. It's a story about government control, religious intolerance, and the loss of basic freedoms. The Russian authorities have been using various tactics to control religious groups, from legal restrictions to outright bans. Protests have erupted across the country, with people demanding the right to practice their faith without fear of persecution. These protests, however, are often met with harsh crackdowns, further highlighting the oppressive environment in which these religious communities are forced to exist. People around the world are worried about this decision. International news outlets have picked up the story, broadcasting the plight of these religious minorities to a global audience. Concerned faces in crowds watching the news reflect the growing unease about the situation in Russia. Human rights organizations and foreign governments have expressed their dismay, calling for immediate action to protect religious freedoms. It might scare other minority groups in Russia. They might be next. The fear among these communities is palpable. Small religious gatherings are held in secret, with participants constantly looking over their shoulders, worried that they might be the next target of government action. This atmosphere of fear and uncertainty is taking a toll on the mental and emotional well-being of these individuals, who simply want to practice their faith in peace. Russia is making it harder to practice religion freely. Surveillance cameras are installed around religious sites and access is often restricted. People who wish to pray or attend services find themselves facing numerous obstacles, from bureaucratic red tape to outright harassment. This systematic approach to curbing religious freedom is a clear violation of basic human rights, and it is causing widespread distress among the affected communities. The world is watching and hoping things will change. International leaders have voiced their concerns, urging the Russian government to respect religious freedoms and uphold international human rights standards. The global community is closely monitoring the situation, hoping that increased pressure will lead to positive change. However, the road ahead is uncertain, and the affected communities continue to live in a state of anxiety and fear. People want everyone in Russia to be free to practice their religion without being afraid. The vision of a harmonious society where people of different faiths can coexist peacefully is a powerful one. Peaceful assemblies and demonstrations are held, with participants holding signs advocating for religious freedom. These acts of solidarity send a strong message to the authorities, emphasizing the importance of protecting the right to worship freely. The fight for religious freedom in Russia is more important than ever. As the struggle continues, the resilience and determination of these communities serve as a beacon of hope. The symbolic images of breaking chains and hopeful faces in crowds remind us that the fight for religious freedom is far from over. It is a battle that requires the support and solidarity of the global community as we stand together in the pursuit of justice and equality for all.